Hey, how's everybody doing? Um, let's see here. I should be hardwired and I'm not. Can y'all hear me okay? Let me know in the chat. The sound is doing what the sound is supposed to do, but every time you go live, it's always a gamble. I see some folks are here with me. Thank y'all for coming to hang out. All right, we're good to go. So let's get this party started. Happy third day of Vlogmas. For Vlogmas, that is the first 25 days of December. I will be going live here at 2 p.m. Eastern every day. And so today is day 3. In yesterday's video, we talked about the pros and cons of choosing a nomadic lifestyle when moving abroad. One of the main advantages of being a nomad is the ability to kind of try before you buy when choosing a location, uh, which is what another way that you can do that is with a scouting trip. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But before we do that, I should probably introduce myself because there is a good chance that since I am posting every day, YouTube will share my content with people who are previously unfamiliar with me. And so if you are one of those people, either you're here live or you happen to be watching the replay, welcome. Hey, glad you're here. My name is Adelia, aka Picky Girl Travels. I travel, but I also live abroad. I left the United States a little bit more than 7 years ago. I've lived in 4 different countries, all on my journey to create the life of my dreams. And that is kind of what we talk about here on this channel. I share my experiences living abroad, traveling solo, and we also talk about money because I can tell you firsthand, living a life of your dreams ain't free. Uh, Money does buy happiness, and so understanding money, getting better with money, figuring out our money, that's all a part of what we do here on this channel. And so if you like those things and you want to keep videos like this showing up on your feed, be sure to subscribe, maybe hit the like button. If you really like what you hear and you think somebody else would benefit from it, share this video with them. Okay, I am curious if anybody here has taken a, scouting trip or is contemplating taking a scouting trip. In the work that I do, and in case you're new here, you may not know what that work is. I am a financial educator, but I also am I help people relocate. I help people figure out their process for moving abroad. And in that line of work, I often get asked um, 3 main questions when it comes to scouting trips. And so we're going to talk about that. Okay. FDM 215 spent a month in Cancun 2022, 5 weeks in Medellin 2023. Pamela is planning a scouting trip or 3 for next year. And Winnie is contemplating it. One of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation, in addition to being a financial educator and a relocation specialist, I am also the co-host of Reclaim the Retreat. It is a retreat for women and femmes who want to reclaim their lives, their peace, their happiness. And we just finished one last week in El Salvador. And one of the reclaimers, one of the retreat attendees, was struggling trying to figure out how they could make scouting trips work with a sort of inflexible work schedule. And so that got me to thinking about like, if you've only got a limited amount of time, like what are the essentials? What are the things that you absolutely have to do when you are scouting? So that I'm not going to mention that person's name, but thank you for the idea for this live. Okay, I see several of you uh, are planning, and Monica has scouted 6 cities in Mexico. Okay, all right. So I was just saying that there are like 3 main questions, like the most common questions I get when it comes to scouting trips. The first one is it necessary? Do you have to take a scouting trip? I might be in the minority on this, but I don't necessarily think a scouting trip is a must. I might qualify that and say, probably not, maybe not. I don't know. It depends. It really does depend. That's live life here in Mexico. Sorry about that, y'all. Okay, so it depends. I have In essence, I've never done a scouting trip for any of the places I have lived. Mexico City turned out to be a great match for me. Some of the other places I lived did not, but I can live with that. And so when I say that maybe you don't need to do a scouting trip, it's really going to depend on who you are and how much do you know about the potential places that you are considering. In my former life, I was a history teacher and a geography teacher, so I had kind of this pool of background knowledge about quite a few places in the world where I could easily eliminate places I did not think were going to be a good fit. I could easily match up places that I thought fit my criteria. But if you're somebody who's like, girl, I don't know nothing about no other place. Well, then if you don't have a pool of background knowledge to pull from, doing a scouting trip might be a good idea for you. Okay. So that's one maybe. Another one is okay, so let's say you don't do the scouting trip and you move there and it's not what you want. It's not giving. Um, what happens next? How well do you pivot in situations like that when things don't work out? If you know it is going to be really hard for you to have uprooted your life, moved to a place, it doesn't work out, and it's gonna be a struggle for you, traumatic, what have you, then you probably should do a scouting trip. There are some people, they do all the research, they pick a place, they get there, and they're like, you know what? This ain't my place. And then they go back to the research and they choose a new place and they keep it moving and it's no big deal. So this is one of those situations where I think you kind of got to know who you are and how you handle things. If you are somebody that's like, no, I need to have my ducks in a row, girl, before I go, you probably want to do a scouting trip. So that's the first question. Jess, you are 100% correct on this. It does cost to pivot. If you know that your financial situation is such that you don't really have unlimited funds for that pivot, you might want to go ahead and take a scouting trip. Um, like I said, you got to know yourself. The second question that I get a lot about scouting trips is how long should it be? Um, and again, thinking about the attendee to the latest Reclaim the Retreat, who really could only get away on weekends. And so that was going to determine which countries she could scout because maybe she really liked Thailand would be a great fit for her. But you can't fly to Thailand over a 3 or 4 day weekend. That's not going to work. So that would limit them geographically in that sense. Um, Again, I think this depends on who you are. I do think you could do a pretty good scouting trip in like 4 or 5 days. I don't think you need to be in a place for multiple months. But if your schedule is such that you can be in a place for a month or 2, absolutely. That's really going to give you time where you can leisurely explore the various aspects of a location. If you're working on a 4 to 5 day timeline, um, you don't have time for leisure. It is going to be work the entire time on that trip. And some people don't want to feel that pressure of time, but some people don't have the luxury of more time, and so that's what they have to do. I think you can do a good job like that. Now, 1 or 2 days, I don't think you can really make that work for a scouting trip. Okay. Um, and then the third question, which is probably going to be most of our focus today, is what should you do during the scouting trip? Like what are the what should you be filling those 4 or 5 days, those 2 or 3 months, what have you? What should you be doing? Okay, so I think that the first thing you need to do starts before you even go on the trip. You've got to have a strategy. This is especially true for somebody who does not have a lot of time. If you've only got about a week to spend in a place to see if it will work for you, which I think is very possible, especially if you've spent time really assessing what is on your absolute have to have list. What are your deal breakers? Um, all of that. If you've done a good job doing the pre-work, you can absolutely figure out in a week whether or not this place is going to work for you. So before you hit the ground, you've got to have a strategy. You've got to have a plan. Okay. And all of the things I'm going to mention now are a part of that strategy. Okay. First thing, you want to spend time in the neighborhoods that you have already researched before you hit the ground, that you are considering doing life there. Okay. And when I say spend time, that does not mean book a hotel in this neighborhood that you're considering. No, I mean, get out, walk around. For the as much as possible during your scouting trip, avoid Uber. Because even if walkability is not something that's super important to you, avoid Uber because the way that you really get to know a place is walking around. That is where you get to notice the small mom and pop shops. That's where you get to notice the vibe and the feel of a particular street. Because, like here in Mexico City, people ask about neighborhoods, but honestly, in a lot of neighborhoods, it's different from one street to the next. And that may not be something that you can pick up on in the back of an Uber. Okay, so spend time um, walking and exploring the places that the neighborhoods that you have narrowed it down to. I don't think, unless your scouting trip is something like 2, 3 months, I don't think during the scouting trip is the time to be figuring out possible neighborhoods. I think that's part of the pre-work you do before you ever hit the ground there. Okay. Um, and honestly, I would avoid staying in a hotel at all. Because think about what is the purpose of a scouting trip? You're trying to figure out, is this a place that you can live? When you live there, you're not going to be staying in a hotel. Okay, no matter how small of a boutique hotel or a guest house it is, there is still a certain barrier or removal that you have away from everyday life. And that's what you're trying to figure out is, can you do everyday life in this place? So I would avoid staying in a hotel. Does that mean Airbnb? Maybe. Maybe that means renting a room, maybe that means Airbnb, maybe that means something else. But you're trying to, in whatever time period you have, create the life that you intend to have in this place. And I would bet the life you intend to have does not include you living in a hotel. Okay. So, if at all possible, I would skip the hotel. Um, I would also, a part of your strategy, your plan, figure out what are the things that you want to do on a typical day in your life. When you envision yourself living in this place, what does your life look like? Because you should have done that already when you created your list of, these are the things I'm looking for in a new home. These are the things I absolutely cannot tolerate. You should have already done this. So think about, what are the things I want to do in a typical day? And then create a plan to do those things while you're on the scouting trip. Does that mean going to get your nails done? Does that mean going to the dry cleaner? Uh, Going shopping, whether it's for clothes, shoes, food, what would you shop for? Go try and do that in the same way that you would do it if you were living there. And I would make a special point to take note of what's available. When I go to the store, like, not me personally, but maybe this is you. You like in your downtime to like window shop and browse for clothing. Okay, do that. And while you're doing it, do they have your size at the store? Do they have, like, as you're noticing the different shops, do they have the style of things that you would want to buy there? What are the prices looking like? Because remember, in addition to figuring out, can you actually live in this place, your scouting trip is also helping you figure out, um, and the thought just left my brain. I guess that's the problem with doing these live. Is also gathering data. You want to know, you want to make note of prices because, okay, we're living in 2023. A lot of us are doing our research online. I can tell you in the last week, I have Googled apartment prices in Mexico City. And let me tell you, the stuff that y'all are finding on Google does not represent what is happening on the ground here. So, if that can be true about rent, it could also be true about the cost of other goods. So, this is a data gathering trip. So, as you are out doing the things that you would want to do in your daily life, if that means hitting up cafes, like when I went to Portugal in the spring, it was a quasi scouting trip. And one of the things I was very intentional about was trying to find bakeries and cafes because those things play a very big part in how I live my everyday life here in Mexico City. So if I'm going to move to Lisbon, I need to be able to do the same thing. All right. Um, Now, depending on your situation, are you moving by yourself? Are you moving with somebody, a child, a parent? Uh, uh, the word in Spanish is coming to my head, a pet. Um, if there are specialists or special needs for those things, you might want to investigate those while you're there. Now, here's the thing, like, let's say you're moving with kids, you may or may not be able to get somebody to show you around a school. It depends. That might be a security issue. So that's something, again, you've got to have a plan. You got to create a strategy. You cannot just show up and try and put this stuff together on the fly. You got to anticipate ahead of time. That might be looking for vets. Like, is it important to you if you're bringing your cat or your dog or your guinea pig? Is it important to you that the vet be located close to where you live? How far away are you willing to go? Do you think you might need a English speaking emergency vet. I didn't think I needed one until I did at 2 a.m. in the morning. And turns out the closest one to me is at least a 35-minute car ride away. So if you know that you've got certain medications, medical needs, try to incorporate investigating those specialists while you are there. Um, and something else that should be a part of your plan is to purposefully set up meetings with other foreigners like you. Somebody who is living their life much in the way that you want to live your life there. If you are a Black person, a Black woman, I think it's very important that you try to find somebody else like you in this place. Because let's be real, there are certain experiences I have as a Black woman that I can meet with all the white girls. I can meet with all the Japanese girls who happen to live here, but they're not going to understand what it would be like for me to live there. If you are a parent, try to find somebody else who is a parent with a kid of a similar age, you know, a dog mom, whatever your little special niche is, try to meet up with foreigners who fit that niche, who live in this place that you're considering. Um, Now, it would be really great if um, don't do this, okay? Don't get into, let's say, an online community and say, hey, I'm gonna be in town this day. If anybody wants to meet up or hang out with me, you know, let's get together. No, you're casting a very wide net. You need to be very specific and very intentional. That again might mean you have to do a little work on the front end of identifying who are some possible people you could connect with, issuing them a personal and direct invitation, and offering to pick up the tab. Okay? Because one of the reasons you want to meet with them is you want to hear about their experiences. You want to hear about what struggles they've had. You probably want to ask some specific questions. So you want a lot out of this exchange. The least you can do is be like, girl, no, I'm picking up lunch. Don't worry about that, you know. But again, we read all this stuff online about a place. During your scouting trip, you want to talk to people and verify what their experiences are there. What, you know, like you read online, this is what the process is like for finding an apartment. How was that for you? Was it similar? Is what I'm finding online, would you say that's accurate? Those are the kinds of questions you might ask. You might also ask them, what are things that you can't get here? You know, because are those things on your make it or break it list? Are those things that you don't care about? You know, again, so that you can determine whether or not this place is a good match for you. Um, I would also, during my scouting trip, I would start figuring out if I'm going to live here, what are some of the places, the spaces, the kinds of events where you can cultivate a connection with local people? Because yes, you need both in your life. Um, Somebody recently told me a story about going to the nail shop, and a woman walked into the nail shop. All of the people working there knew her, but when the ladies working in the nail shop said something to her in their language, oh girl didn't have any clue what they were saying to her. This woman had been living in this country for 4 years. And when the person I spoke to pressed her, was like, you know, girl, like why you don't, you've been here 4 years and you don't know the language, or you don't know this simple thing they were asking you about your nails? The response was, well, I live mostly by foreigners. You Yes, you need to have foreigner connections because a local is not going to be able to tell you anything about the immigration process. A local isn't going to be able to tell you about, what are your obligations as far as you being a foreigner in that country. So you need foreign friends who've had similar experiences, but you also need local friends because you move into this new place. So I'm not saying that during your scouting trip you need to make those friends, but start collecting a list of ideas of, okay, so when I live here, and when you think about how you want to live in the place, how are you going to connect with locals there? Is it going to be like, maybe you take a page out of my book? Like I looked for crafters because I sew. I was like, okay, if I can find some folks who are into fabric and textiles and sewing, that might be one way to connect. Dance. It might be through something as simple as a language exchange, but that should be one of the priorities on your list. Okay. Um, Something else to think about is how you're eating while you're there. It can be very easy to get sucked into the vacationy, touristy things to do, but I would encourage you to eat like you live there, not like you're on vacation. That probably means, now again, this is going to go back to what is the lifestyle you envision. That probably is going to mean you need to cook while you are there because you need to experience preparing the kinds of meals that you want to eat and have the experience of going to the store and figuring out, well, do they have the ingredients for this thing that I love to cook? Or if they don't, what are some substitutes? There is that part, right? Um, there's also the cost piece of it. Eat a lot of places eating, because let's be real, the way we eat on vacation is not the way we be eating at home. And so that could be more expensive, and that's giving you a false sense of what your costs are going to be. And the last thing I would say is tied to that, which is you should, during your scouting trip, you should be keeping a running tab, an ongoing list of what you are spending. How much is transportation costing you? Because you're supposed to be moving around the city in the same way that you would move around when you live there. This is going to give you some insight as to what your cost of living will actually be versus this is what I found online on Nubio. So transportation, food, entertainment, you can't really gauge rent until you're actually in a position to rent. But keep track of what you're spending. And that way, at the end of your trip, when you go back home and you're trying to see, all right, one, did I like this place? Could I do the things I want to do, be able to do there? But then two, okay, does it make sense for my budget and my price range? Can I live the life I want at the price point that I want? Uh, and so you really can't find that until you're there. Let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna go back and look at some of your comments and see if, oops, hold on, I meant to start that, and your questions. Okay. So, um, okay. What wouldn't you say are the top 10 things to do on a 7 day or less? What wouldn't I say? Like, are you asking me what are the things I would not waste my time doing? Um, I would, if I've got a week or less, and this is a place that I'm actually considering moving, I am going to avoid during doing the tourist things. That might need to be a separate trip. But I am going to stay away from anything that doesn't look like me trying to live the life that I envision there. because I'm very quickly, in a week or less, trying to get a feel for one. I've already selected this place based off of research. So I'm trying to get a feel for, does that research pan out? And two, I am trying to see, do I actually like it? Because like what I think I'm going to like versus what I actually like might not be the same thing. Like Portugal is a place I know a lot of folks love Portugal, and I don't hate it. But on paper, Portugal makes a lot of sense, particularly Lisbon. But when I actually went there for the way that I live my life now, I don't know that it made the most sense for me. Okay, and so I think like that needs to be your guiding force here is, how do I want to live my life in this space, and do everything you can over the span of your scouting trip in order to do that. Okay. All right. I think that was the only question I saw. I see that y'all are doing multiple scouting trips, many of you, which is awesome. Um, so yeah, that is my take on that. That is my advice for those of you who are planning scouting trips. Those are the elements of a scouting trip that I think you need to make sure that you focus on when you are trying a place on for size. I did an interview. Let me see if I can find the link to that. Um, because for a long time, I was sort of, maybe we could say, anti-scouting trip. Like I didn't really think it was a necessity. Uh, okay. But I did have a guest on, oh gosh, when was this? This was a while ago. Um, who shared their experience doing their scouting trip in two different countries. It is a scouting trip. I can't type and talk. Worth it. And I will link this in the description below. All right. So, that is it for the third day of Vlogmas. I will be back here again tomorrow. I don't know what day tomorrow is, but it's day 4 of Vlogmas. I will be back here at 2 p.m. Eastern. And I hope y'all will join me. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If this sounds like the kind of content that you're into, go ahead and subscribe. And if you know somebody who you think this might be of use to, please share it with them. Oh, also, folks who are like in that planning stage, I realize this. A lot of the new people may not realize it, but in the description of this video is a link to my Move Abroad checklist, because I know we get people who are all at different stages of this process. But if you're kind of like, okay, maybe I need a scouting trip, but what the hell else am I supposed to be doing if I want to move abroad? Go ahead and click the link for the checklist, and that will give you a place to start. Okay. And thank y'all for coming to hang out with me, and I will see you tomorrow.